Denzel Washington once said, "A man who stays silent after being disrespected is the one you should truly fear." Then Niccolò Machiavelli in his wisdom said, "The prince who is not wise himself cannot be counseled." In a world obsessed with noise, reaction, and constant expression, silence has become rare. And because it is rare, it has become powerful. Today, leaders are told to speak faster, respond immediately, explain themselves endlessly, and defend every perceived slight. Social media rewards outrage. Modern culture praises emotional release. Silence, on the other hand, is often mistaken for weakness, fear, or submission. But history tells a very different story. The most feared, respected, and influential leaders did not rush to speak. They did not react impulsively. They mastered the art of restraint. They understood that silence, when used deliberately, creates uncertainty, authority, and psychological dominance. This is not the silence of passivity. This is strategic silence. Strategic silence is the ability to withhold reaction when others expect it, to observe when others speak too much, and to act only when timing is perfect. It is silence sharpened into a weapon. And this is where the wisdom of Denzel Washington and Niccolò Machiavelli intersect. Denzel Washington's quote points to a deep psychological truth. When a man is disrespected and does not react, he forces his opponent into discomfort. The aggressor expected chaos, emotion, or submission, but instead encounters calm. That calm signals something dangerous: control. Machiavelli, writing centuries earlier, understood the same principle from a political lens. A ruler who lacks inner wisdom cannot be guided by others. Why? Because without self-mastery, every external voice controls him. Silence, in Machiavelli's philosophy, is not emptiness. It is evidence of internal order. Together, these ideas reveal a timeless lesson. True power begins with self-control. Most people fear silence because it exposes them. When you stop talking, you are left alone with your thoughts. When you stop reacting, you remove emotional cover. Silence demands confidence because you are no longer performing, explaining, or seeking validation. That is why insecure people fill space with noise. They argue to prove worth. They explain to avoid judgment. They react to feel powerful. But leaders, true leaders, operate differently. They understand that every word spoken reveals position. Every emotional reaction gives information. Every impulsive response hands leverage to the other side. Silence, by contrast, withholds information. In war, intelligence is power. In politics, ambiguity is leverage. In leadership, silence creates gravity. When a leader remains silent, others speak. When others speak, they reveal intentions, fears, and weaknesses. The silent leader listens and gains advantage. Let us step back into history. In ancient Rome, some of the most powerful figures were known not for their speeches, but for their restraint. Augustus Caesar, the first emperor of Rome, rarely reacted publicly to insults or provocations. Instead, he waited. He observed. And when he moved, it was decisive and irreversible. His silence unsettled enemies. They never knew whether he was planning retaliation or had already decided their fate. Similarly, in ancient China, the strategist Sun Tzu emphasized the power of withholding action. He who knows when he can fight and when he can't will be victorious. Knowing when not to act is as important as knowing when to strike. Silence buys time. Time allows clarity. Clarity enables precision. Machiavelli echoed this centuries later, warning rulers against impulsive displays of emotion. A prince who reacts emotionally becomes predictable, and predictability is weakness. The greatest leaders understood something simple yet profound. Control yourself first, and the world becomes easier to control. Respect is not begged. 4. It is felt. When someone speaks too much, they appear needy. When someone explains too much, they appear uncertain. When someone reacts instantly, they appear controlled by others. Silence reverses this dynamic. A silent leader communicates confidence without words. Their calm suggests that they are not threatened, not rushed, and not desperate for approval. This unsettles those who rely on emotional reactions to gain advantage. Silence also creates anticipation. People lean in, they speculate, they project meaning. And here lies the hidden power. People often project strength onto silence. They assume the silent person knows more, sees more, or plans more than they do. In leadership, perception often matters as much as reality. It is critical to clarify this. Strategic silence is not inaction. Inaction is paralysis. Silence is preparation. Silence is the pause before the strike, the breath before the command, the stillness before movement. A leader who never acts loses authority, but a leader who acts without silence loses precision. Machiavelli warned that a prince must appear decisive, but not reckless. Silence allows decisions to mature before being revealed. It separates impulse from intention. Denzel Washington's quote does not glorify avoidance. It glorifies restraint. The man who stays silent after disrespect is not weak. He is deciding how and when to respond. And timing changes everything. Most people are slaves to their emotions. They react when insulted. They lash out when challenged. They speak when uncomfortable. Leaders cannot afford this weakness. Self-control is the foundation of authority. If you cannot control your emotions, others will, by provoking them. Silence interrupts this cycle. When a leader refuses to react emotionally, they deny others leverage. They reclaim control of the situation. They force the environment to adapt to them. This is why silence can inspire followers and intimidate rivals at the same time. Followers see discipline. Rivals see unpredictability. Both respond with caution. In this video, we are not talking about silence as a moral virtue or a passive habit. We are talking about silence as a deliberate leadership strategy. Across history, psychology, and power dynamics, silence has been used to command respect, manipulate perception, control emotional environments, disarm opponents, create strategic advantage. If you've made it this far, you already understand something most people never will. Leadership is not about dominance, it's about control. If you want more insights on power, self-mastery, psychology, and strategic leadership, subscribe to this channel now. This is where we break down the principles that separate followers from leaders and noise from influence. Subscribe for more leadership insights. Silence is not passive. It is chosen. The most dangerous mistake people make is assuming silence means nothing is happening. In reality, silence often means everything is happening internally. Plans are forming. Information is being processed. Decisions are crystallizing. And when action finally comes, it feels sudden only to those who weren't paying attention. Followers look for stability. When leaders react emotionally, followers feel uncertain. When leaders stay composed, followers feel safe. Silence signals confidence in direction, trust in judgment, emotional maturity. People follow those who appear unmovable in chaos. Silence is not empty. Psychologically, silence is one of the most uncomfortable experiences for the human mind. When words disappear, the brain rushes to fill the gap. Thoughts accelerate, assumptions multiply, anxiety rises. This is not accidental. It is biological. The human brain evolved to seek patterns, signals, and feedback. When silence interrupts this flow, the mind becomes restless. It begins to project meaning where none has been explicitly given. And this is where power enters the equation. A leader who understands silence understands how people think under pressure. When someone speaks, they reveal their intentions. When someone stays silent, intention becomes unknown, and uncertainty triggers fear. Psychologists refer to this as cognitive discomfort. The brain dislikes ambiguity. It prefers closure, even if the closure is negative. Silence denies closure. Think about it. An insult unanswered lingers longer than one replied to. A message left on read provokes more anxiety than rejection. A calm stare unsettles more than shouting. Silence creates a vacuum, and nature and the human mind hates vacuums. So people rush to fill it. They explain themselves. They overtalk. They justify. They confess. The silent person does nothing and gains everything. This is why interrogators use silence. This is why master negotiators pause. This is why powerful leaders speak last, or not at all. One of the most underestimated aspects of silence is how exposing it is to others. When you remain silent, nervous people ramble, arrogant people overassert, insecure people self-sabotage. They speak not because it is wise, but because silence makes them uncomfortable. And in doing so, they reveal their fears, their motivations, their weaknesses. Machiavelli understood this deeply. He warned that a prince should listen more than he speaks, not out of politeness, but out of strategy. A leader who speaks too much teaches others how to manipulate him. A leader who listens learns how to manipulate the situation. Silence is not withdrawal. It is observation. Ego is the primary reason most people cannot remain silent. The ego craves validation, dominance, recognition, emotional release. When disrespected, the ego screams, "Respond now." When challenged, it demands, "Prove yourself." When ignored, it panics, "Say something." But leaders cannot be ruled by ego. Every emotional reaction is a leak of control. Denzel Washington's quote cuts straight through this illusion. A man who stays silent after disrespect is feared not because he is passive, but because he is disciplined. That discipline signals something dangerous. This person is not emotionally accessible, and emotionally inaccessible people are hard to manipulate. Emotional dominance does not come from loudness. It comes from stability. When one person is calm and the other is reactive, the calm person controls the frame. They dictate the emotional tempo of the interaction. Silence intensifies this effect. Imagine two leaders in conflict. One raises their voice, defends themselves, reacts. The other listens, says nothing, remains composed. Observers instinctively assign authority to the second. Why? Because emotional control is interpreted as strength. In psychology, this is known as emotional asymmetry. The person least affected emotionally holds the most power. Silence is the fastest way to establish this asymmetry. Here is a critical psychological mechanism: projection. When people don't know what you think, they project their own thoughts onto you. If they are guilty, they assume you suspect them. If they are insecure, they assume you judge them. If they are fearful, they assume you are dangerous. Silence becomes a mirror, and mirrors make people uncomfortable. This is why silence can intimidate without threats. The fear is not created by the silent leader. It is created by the observer's own mind. A talkative leader reassures. A silent leader unsettles. And unsettled minds are easier to influence. Let's be clear. Silence can be used ethically or manipulatively. Power itself is neutral. It depends on the hand that wields it. Strategic silence has been used in politics, negotiations, warfare, Corporate leadership interrogation. In negotiations, silence pressures the other party to improve their offer. In politics, silence can signal strength or create suspense. In leadership, it can discipline environments without punishment. Machiavelli advised rulers to appear unreadable. Why? Because predictability invites exploitation. Silence preserves mystery, and mystery preserves power. One of the biggest leadership mistakes is over-explaining. Leaders who explain every decision appear uncertain, even when they are not. Silence, by contrast, implies confidence in one's judgment. This is not arrogance, it is restraint. When a leader speaks less, their words carry weight, their decisions feel final, their presence feels deliberate. Silence trains others to listen carefully because they know words are rare. Scarcity creates value. Important distinction. Strategic silence is not emotional suppression. Suppression is unhealthy. It buries emotion without processing it. Strategic silence processes emotion internally, then decides how, when, or whether to express it. The silent leader feels anger, but does not act from it. Feels insult, but does not display it. Feels pressure, but does not surrender to it. This internal mastery separates leaders from followers. Machiavelli's prince was not emotionless, he was controlled. Silence also functions as a test. It tests who can tolerate uncertainty, who seeks approval, who lacks self-control. People who cannot handle silence often reveal they cannot handle power. A leader who watches silently learns who is impulsive, who is loyal, and who cracks under pressure. This is not cruelty. It is intelligence. Silence is rarely the end. It is the pause before execution. History shows this pattern repeatedly. Quiet observation, information gathering, emotional control, decisive action. Great leaders do not announce their moves. They execute them. Silence sharpens the blade. At this point, the pattern should be clear. Silence disrupts emotional balance, exposes ego, creates psychological leverage, enhances authority, prepares decisive action. But silence alone is not enough. Without timing, it becomes hesitation. Without action, it becomes stagnation. That is why silence must be paired with strategy. If you believe that strength is found in restraint, not reaction. If you believe that silence can be louder than shouting. If you believe that self-control is the foundation of real power, then subscribe to this channel and like this video. It tells us you understand the message, and it helps spread it to others who need to hear it. Like this video if you believe in the power of silence. Let's turn silence into movement. Silence is only powerful when it leads somewhere. Without action, silence becomes hesitation. Without timing, action becomes chaos. The greatest leaders in history did not remain silent forever. They remained silent until the moment was right. Then they acted with such clarity and force that their silence suddenly made sense. This is the art of strategic action. Silence gathers energy. Action releases it. And the space between the two is where leadership is forged. Timing is what separates boldness from recklessness. Two leaders can make the same move. One is praised, the other is destroyed. The difference is not courage, it is timing. Silence allows leaders to read the environment, let opponents expose themselves, allow emotions to cool, watch power dynamics settle. Machiavelli repeatedly emphasized this. He warned rulers against acting under emotional pressure, especially anger or pride. Emotion clouds judgment. Silence clears it. A leader who moves too early reveals intent. A leader who moves too late loses opportunity. Strategic silence exists to find that narrow window in between. One of the oldest strategic principles is this: Let your opponent move first. Why? Because the first move reveals strategy. Silence pressures others to act out of discomfort. When they do, they often act imperfectly. They overcommit. They misjudge. They reveal weakness. The silent leader gains information without spending resources. This principle appears everywhere. In chess, the player who reacts correctly often wins. In negotiations, the party who speaks last often benefits. In politics, the leader who waits avoids unnecessary enemies. Silence creates asymmetry. You know more than they know. And knowledge is leverage. Silence must end with decisiveness, or it loses meaning. When leaders finally speak or act after a long pause, their action must feel clear, final, unapologetic. This contrast is crucial. Quiet observation followed by decisive action shocks the system. It resets expectations. It establishes authority. Think of leaders who rarely speak publicly, but when they do, markets move, people listen, institutions react. Their silence trained others to take them seriously. Consider Napoleon Bonaparte. Napoleon was not loud in council. He listened, he studied, he waited. But when he acted with speed and overwhelming force. His enemies often mistook his silence for indecision, until it was too late. Or take Abraham Lincoln. Lincoln endured relentless criticism. He rarely responded emotionally. He allowed opponents to underestimate him. His silence was mistaken for weakness. But when the moment came, emancipation, wartime decisions, political maneuvers, his actions reshaped history. Silence was not his weakness, it was his preparation. Predictability is comfort for followers, but opportunity for enemies. Machiavelli advised rulers to remain unreadable. If people know how you will react, they can manipulate you. Strategic silence disrupts predictability. When people cannot anticipate your response, they hesitate, they become cautious, they second-guess. This hesitation gives leaders space to maneuver. Silence keeps others guessing. Action keeps them respecting. Together, they create dominance. This transition is where many leaders fail. They either stay silent too long, act too emotionally, over-explain their actions, seek approval after deciding. Strategic action requires clean execution. Once the decision is made, there is no emotional justification, no defensive explanation, no reactive argument. The action speaks for itself. Silence before action gathers authority. Silence after action reinforces it. Every action creates reaction. Leaders who talk too much before acting create resistance. Leaders who announce intentions invite sabotage. Silence minimizes backlash. When action arrives without warning, opponents have no time to organize. Critics are forced to react instead of prepare. This is why Machiavelli warned against revealing plans. A leader's silence protects the strategy. In modern environments, corporate, political, social, the same rules apply. A leader who reacts instantly to criticism appears insecure. A leader who pauses, assesses, and responds selectively appears strong. Silence allows leaders to ignore noise, filter advice, choose battles, act from clarity. Not every challenge deserves a response. Not every insult deserves attention. Strategic leaders conserve energy for moments that matter. Many modern leaders perform leadership instead of practicing it. They tweet reactions. They explain constantly. They fight publicly. This creates the illusion of control, but erodes real authority. True leadership often happens quietly. Decisions are made behind closed doors. Actions are executed cleanly. Explanations are minimal. Silence is not absence. It is intentional presence. Half measures destroy credibility. When you finally act fully, commit completely. Accept consequences calmly. Nothing weakens authority faster than hesitation after action. Silence builds expectation. Action must fulfill it. Think of silence as discipline and action as expression. Discipline without expression is repression. Expression without discipline is chaos. Leadership requires both. Machiavelli's ideal prince mastered restraint, but also understood when to be ruthless, decisive, and bold. Denzel Washington's quote implies the same truth. Silence is not fear, it is choice. The feared man is not the loudest. He is the one who chooses when to move. By now, the pattern is complete. Silence controls emotion. Silence gathers intelligence. Silence creates psychological advantage. Action executes power. But leadership is not only about control over others, it is about control over oneself. And that is where we conclude. Now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever used silence as a strategy? Have you seen it used against you? Do you think silence builds power or hides weakness? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Share your perspective on strategic silence. Silence is not the absence of power, it is the containment of it. Throughout history, those who ruled not only kingdoms, but themselves, understood a simple truth. The loudest voice in the room is rarely the most dangerous. The most dangerous individual is the one who listens, observes, waits, and then acts without hesitation. Denzel Washington's words were not poetic exaggeration. They were a warning. A man who remains silent after being disrespected is not confused, afraid, or defeated. He is calculating. He is disciplined. He has removed emotion from the equation, and once emotion is gone, power shifts. Machiavelli understood this centuries earlier. He warned rulers that wisdom begins internally. A prince who cannot govern his impulses will always be governed by others, by advisors, by rivals, by public opinion, by fear. Strategic silence is the bridge between these two ideas. It is self-mastery made visible. Anyone can speak. Anyone can react. Anyone can defend themselves when attacked. But leadership demands something rarer: restraint under pressure. Silence tests your ego. Silence tests your patience. Silence tests your confidence. When you remain silent, you stand alone, without applause, without validation, without immediate relief. That discomfort is precisely why silence is powerful. Most people cannot tolerate it, and those who can, rise. Modern culture celebrates emotional exposure. Reaction is rewarded with attention. Outrage is monetized. Noise is constant. But respect operates on different rules. Respect is granted to those who do not explain themselves unnecessarily, do not chase validation, do not react impulsively, do not reveal emotional vulnerability to opponents. Silence communicates all of this without a single word. A silent leader appears centered. A silent leader appears unshaken. A silent leader appears sovereign. This is important. Silence is not about being introverted, cold, or distant. It is a skill. It can be learned. It can be trained. It can be sharpened. Silence means choosing not to speak when speaking offers no advantage. It means letting others expose themselves. It means observing emotional climates before stepping into them. It means understanding that not every moment demands your voice, but every moment tests your control. Leaders who master silence gain something most never will: long-term authority. They are not drained by constant conflict. They are not predictable. They are not reactive. Their words carry weight because they are rare. Their actions matter because they are intentional. Silence compounds. Over time, people begin to listen more closely, speak more carefully, respect boundaries, anticipate consequences. The leader never had to raise their voice. Silence is not eternal. A leader who never acts becomes irrelevant. Strategic silence must always lead to strategic action. The discipline is knowing when to wait. The mastery is knowing when to move. When silence ends, action must be clear, decisive, calm, no apology, no explanation, no emotional residue, just execution. When you master silence, insults lose their power, manipulation fails, pressure weakens, authority strengthens, people stop testing you. Not because you're loud, but because you're unreadable. And unreadable individuals are dangerous in the best way. Have you ever used silence as a strategy? Have you seen it used against you? Do you think silence builds power or hides weakness? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Share your perspective on strategic silence. Silence is not for everyone. It demands patience in a rushed world, control in an emotional culture, confidence in the absence of validation. But for those willing to endure it, silence becomes a weapon, a shield, and a signal. Master yourself first, and the world will listen, whether you speak or not.